When you think of Joseph Stalin, what comes to mind? Probably the iron-fisted dictator of the Soviet Union, right? The man of steel. Well, what if I told you that before all of that, he was basically a gangster? Yeah, let's get into it.
So here's the real head scratcher. This guy was actually studying to be a priest. I'm not kidding, a seminary student. So how on earth do you go from the priesthood to becoming one of history's most effective and ruthless bank robbers? That's the question we're going to unpack today. Okay, so first things first, his name wasn't even Stalin to begin with. He was born Yosef Jugashvili, and while he was supposed to be studying the Bible at the Tiflis Theological Seminary, he found a different kind of scripture, the writings of Karl Marx. He completely abandoned religion for revolutionary Marxism and threw his lot in with the Bolsheviks. And that one decision changed absolutely everything. But, choosing the life of a revolutionary came with a huge problem. It's not like you can just be a revolutionary. The whole thing was illegal, underground, and super expensive. And the Bolsheviks, they were flat broke. They couldn't exactly hold a bake sale to fund the overthrow of the Russian Empire, right? And I mean, look at what they needed money for. We're not just talking about a few rifles here. They needed weapons and explosives, for sure. But also secret printing presses to get their propaganda out. They needed a whole network of safe houses for their operatives, forged documents. They even had to pay salaries for the full-time revolutionaries who couldn't exactly have a day job. It was a massive underground operation, and it was bleeding cash. So what's a broke revolutionary party to do? Well, this is where things get murky. The line between being a political idealist and just a straight-up criminal gets really, really blurry. They came up with a solution that was as practical as it was dangerous. They gave it a fancy name, expropriations. I mean, that is some seriously brilliant marketing, isn't it? It sounds so much more noble than, armed robbery or extortion. It was a way to justify straight-up crime by saying it was all for a noble revolutionary cause. They were basically giving themselves permission to become an organized crime syndicate.
And guess who turned out to be a natural at this? Our guy, the former seminary student, Stalin. Down in the Caucasus region, he became the go-to man for these expropriations. He wasn't just some thug on the street, he was the mastermind. He organized the bank jobs, extorted money from the rich, ran protection rackets, the whole shebang. And the scary part? He was incredibly good at it.
And all of that criminal activity led to his, let's call it his magnum opus, the one job that would make him a legend in the underground. We're talking about the infamous 1907 Tiflis bank heist, probably the most violent political robbery in history. And the plan for this thing just shows you how his mind worked. This wasn't some impulsive smash and grab. Oh no, Stalin was a planner. First, he had his people gather intel, tracking the bank's money transfers. Then, he handpicked his team of loyal revolutionaries. He arranged for explosives and guns to be smuggled in. And here's the key part. He directed the whole operation from the shadows. He was the puppet master, making sure he was nowhere near the scene when it all went down. Okay, so picture this. It's June 26, 1907, a busy square in the city of Tiflis. A stagecoach, basically an armored car of its day, is trotting across the square carrying a huge amount of cash for the state bank. And then, out of absolutely nowhere, boom, the entire square erupts in gunfire and grenade explosions. Total chaos. And the violence was just brutal. The grenades were so powerful, they literally tore people and horses apart. Dozens of soldiers and innocent civilians were killed or wounded in an instant. And in the middle of all that terror and confusion, Stalin's crew just scoops up the cash and melts away into the city. Gone. So how much did they get away with? A staggering 250,000 rubles. For the time, that was an absolutely insane amount of money, especially for a scrappy underground party. Just to give you an idea of how much that was, we're talking about millions and millions of dollars in today's money. This one heist was enough to bankroll the entire Bolshevik movement for a good long while. But, grabbing the cash is one thing. Actually using it is another. The sheer brutality of the attack caused a massive public outcry, and the money itself, well, it came with its own set of problems. The story doesn't end there. And this is where the party had to play a very careful game. Publicly, everyone was horrified. Even other socialists were condemning the Bolsheviks for the bloodshed. So the party leadership had to come out and say, oh, that wasn't us, we had nothing to do with it. But behind closed doors, They were rubbing their hands together because they desperately needed that cash.
They also ran into a pretty big snag. A lot of the big banknotes they stole had their serial numbers recorded, so trying to spend them was like a flashing neon sign pointing right back at you. But Stalin's network was smart. They set up a whole network across Europe to launder the money, exchanging the big bills for smaller, untraceable ones. So yeah, the money was literally tainted with blood, but in the end, it did exactly what it was supposed to do. It kept the revolution alive.
And what all this really proves is just how valuable Stalin became to the party. I mean, look at this. The money he was bringing in wasn't just a little extra pocket change for the Bolsheviks. It was a huge chunk of their entire operating budget. A leader like Lenin, he might not have liked Stalin's methods, but he absolutely could not afford to lose his best fundraiser. Stalin had made himself indispensable. So now let's connect the dots. Because all those skills he learned on the streets of Tiflis, the ruthlessness, the planning, the paranoia, they didn't just vanish once the revolution succeeded. In fact, they became the blueprint for his entire political career. See, inside the Bolshevik Party, Stalin wasn't the big ideas guy. He wasn't the powerful speaker rallying the crowds. No, his reputation was much simpler. He was the guy who got things done, the reliable, uncompromising operator you called when you needed a dirty job handled, no questions asked. And think about the rule book he wrote for himself during those years. Ruthless efficiency, absolute discipline, a complete belief that the ends justify the means. And maybe the most important lesson of all, that violence isn't just a messy side effect, it's a tool, a powerful political tool you can use to get what you want and to crush anyone who stands in your way. When you put it all together, the picture becomes terrifyingly clear. The gangster who planned the Tiflis heist and the dictator who ruled the Soviet Union, they weren't two different people. They were the exact same man, using the exact same playbook. The methods he used to rob a bank were the same ones he used to rule a country. And that leaves us with a pretty heavy question, doesn't it? His life of crime was fundamental to his rise to power. You could argue that without being a gangster, he never would have become a dictator. So if a leader's dark past is what gets them to the top, does that past even matter in the end? It's a really interesting thing to think about, that line between crime and politics, power and morality. What do you guys think? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We'd seriously love to know what you think. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed digging into this piece of history, do us a favor and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more. We'll see you in the next one.